Hi, my name is Nagy, and today we are going to be doing the laboratory titled Sun Printing for Skin Cancer, looking at cancer epigenetics. So skin cancer effectively is a type of cancer affecting the skin cells. It's caused by damage to DNA within the skin cells. So, for example, individuals who have xeroderma pigmentosum, which is a disease resulting in defective DNA repair mechanisms, are more at risk for developing skin cancer. Individuals who spend a lot of time out in the sun are at a higher risk of developing skin cancer. And individuals with a lot of exposure to UV, again, out in the sun, are at a higher risk of developing skin cancer. So UV light and radiation plays a big role in skin cancer because if you're exposed to it a lot, it can directly damage the DNA within your skin cells, and once that DNA is damaged, it can undergo rapid division. That's kind of unusual for those cells, resulting in the formation of tumors and other cancerous effects within the body. So the number one sign or symptom of skin cancer is abnormal changes in your skin, in your fingernails, in your toes, or even vision issues. So kind of anything that has to do with your epidermis, your dermis, or your subcutaneous tissue. So again, when you're looking at unusual lesions in your skin, a lot of things to look for are abnormal colors, abnormal shapes and sizes, abnormal borders on a lesion that maybe you didn't have a couple weeks ago. And again, any changes in your vision, any abnormal lesions or discoloration or brittleness to your nails, whether it's on your fingers or your toes, can also be a telltale sign of skin cancer as well. And all of these lesions kind of vary depending on what type of skin cancer that you have. The best way to avoid skin cancer is to avoid direct exposure to sunlight, direct exposure to UV radiation, and again, of course, if you have a predisposing condition that makes you more likely to develop skin cancer, you have to be extra careful with your sun exposure and your UV light and radiation exposure. So the best way to kind of limit the effects of UV radiation is to block that UV radiation. If you have to be out in the sun, that means wearing sunscreen, which is what we are going to investigate the effects of in this lab today. So the first thing we're going to do in this lab is take our sun paper that was provided to us in our lab kit, and we're going to cut out 3 5x5 centimeter squares with the paper using our ruler and then our pencil and our scissors as well. And then after we cut out those squares, we are going to place each one of these squares in a plastic bag. Each of these plastic bags will be labeled with control, SPF 30, and SPF 50. So we've cut our 3 squares out of our sunprint paper, and one of those squares, that's 5 centimeters by 5 centimeters, has gone into our control bag. One square has gone into our SPF 30 bag. And the last square has gone into our SPF 50 bag. The labels are written on the outside of the bag as to not damage our sunprint paper. So it's actually quite dark outside right now, so I'll reconvene tomorrow midday when it's sunny outside to observe the effects on our sunprint paper of blocking each piece of paper with SPF 30 or SPF 50 or nothing, and observing the effects of direct sunlight, sunlight with SPF 30, and sunlight with SPF 50 on our sunprint paper after introducing it to water and observing the reactions. Okay, so the first step that we have to complete is covering our control bag of the sunprint paper with nothing, covering the SPF 30 bag with SPF 30, and covering the SPF 50 bag with SPF 50. We're then going to let those sit out in the sun for 5 minutes. We'll bring them back inside, soak them in water for 30 seconds, and then we will let them dry in a dark spot, and then we will observe what happened to the sunprint paper. So for this experiment, we didn't exactly get the results that we expected, and I kind of suspect that was due to the UV index in New Jersey. Unfortunately, even in the middle of winter, when it's super sunny outside, the UV is only around a 1 or a 2, so today our UV was a 2. So the front of all of our sunprint papers were supposed to turn like a bluish color, which you can't really see. It's all still white for our 3 pieces. And I'm dropping one here. This piece was white as well. However, I did kind of get a clue as to how much each piece of sunprint paper absorbed based on the back of the paper that was originally black, kind of faded to different colors once it was put in the water. So the SPF 50 paper, the back stayed relatively dark, and to me that kind of tells me that the UV paper, which was supposed to turn a blue color on this side if it absorbed a lot of UV, didn't absorb much UV at all, since the backing of the paper still maintained its color. The SPF 30, again, stayed white on the front, but you could tell it absorbed some UV because the backing of the paper became a lot lighter, so that tells me that the paper was soaking in that pigmentation from the back because of the UV that it was receiving, but you know, still is a fairly blue color, so it didn't absorb too much UV light. And then finally, our control paper absorbed the most UV light. Again, it didn't turn blue on the front like it was supposed to, but in the back, it took in almost all of that pigment and stayed turned fairly white, which tells me that it really did absorb a lot of the pigment from the back that should have turned the front blue because of how much UV it absorbed. So you can kind of conclude from this that if you don't wear sunscreen, such as the control paper, you're going to get pretty burnt because you are absorbing a lot of UV radiation into your skin, whereas if you wear something like SPF 50, which proved to be our most effective sunscreen, then chances are you won't get as burnt. You might tan a little bit even if you use SPF 30, but you're much less likely to get a sunburn wearing that sunscreen.